Story 1. Based on the previous shutdown, it will take 3 to 4 weeks. Story 2. Air traffic controllers are required to come to work even when they are not being paid. Historically, they have been back paid, but that may not be guaranteed. They are already overworked and may begin calling in sick. Whether they do or not, this will cause delays. Delays cascade and compound. Soon every flight is delayed and passengers ask why. This happened during the last major shutdown under President Trump. Two factors make this worse. President Trump has been weakening the Federal Aviation Administration, and air traffic controllers are already under severe strain. The entire economy is also under unusual stress. We could see a catastrophic air accident before the system reaches a breaking point. Story 3. This will last until October 15th, or possibly a few days longer. Families of military personnel will need their paychecks on October 15th. Story 4. I think they will try to make it last as long as possible and use it as a pathetic bargaining chip to destroy as much as they can. They are ripping the government apart from the inside out. Story 5. A month or more is a long time when you are a government employee affected by much of this political nonsense. Story 6. There is really no telling these days. On the one hand, the last action ended because the Transportation Security Administration called a blue flu. Employees called out sick en masse and caused so many headaches for politicians that they suddenly saw eye to eye. I have seen a separate post suggesting that by Monday they may start doing something similar again. On the other hand, the second Trump administration has said it wants to fire people. During the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, air traffic control operations were reduced to zero in quite a few places, so the administration may say that if you do not go to work you are fired, even if you are sick. If there are not enough people to keep certain towers open, they may shut them down and let the airlines work it out. There is no real telling what they are going to do. I suspect it will be over soon, more or less, quite likely before 2026, but who knows? Story 7. My rough estimate is that it will end on October 28th or October 29th. This is based on the estimated pay cycle for essential employees of the Transportation Security Administration and the Federal Aviation Administration. Story 8. Nothing will happen. They will pass a continuing resolution and repeat the process in a year. Story 9. Before the 15th, nothing will happen. It is always just for show. Story 10. Until the stock market goes down, it is a win for the rich and for politicians, especially the Republican Party. When stocks rise, they gain money and federal workers receive back pay. If people do not get paid, they become angry and can be easily manipulated. So this becomes an opportunity to gain voters or provoke protests against the opposing party. Story 11. 4 weeks, with the Democrats cracking first. There will be no health care concessions. There will be some sort of compromise. The other, less likely but possible, option is that Trump will give in to health care demands. However, nothing will happen in the short term. Story 12. Personally, I am hoping it lasts until Republicans finally realize they cannot just browbeat the Democrats into everything they want and come to the table to negotiate. I do not care if it takes months or years. They do not get to act like Eric Cartman, taking their toys and going home when things do not go 100% their way. Stupid, childish motherfuckers. Story 13. I think Republicans will watch the country burn to the ground before they give an inch. Story 14. Why are these questions always posted by accounts that are about a month old? It feels like an organization is gathering information. Story 15. As others have said, it will last probably 3 to 4 weeks. It will end in a deal where Democrats will claim they saved healthcare, but it will not be meaningful. Trump will then try to take credit. His supporters will believe him and everyone else will not. Effectively, we will be right back where we started. Story 16. They have been saying since the Civil War ended that the federal government is broken, and now they are trying to prove it for as long as they can. Story 17. I think flight delays will begin in 2 to 3 weeks and increase as we get closer to Thanksgiving. At most, they will begin within 6 weeks. I am probably in the minority, but I do not think the Democrats have much reason to cave. Polling seems to be in their favor, and it would be a huge win if they can obtain health care concessions. Story 18. Maybe, in a way, it will be permanent. The White House sets its own budget and calls its own shots. This is only slightly different from the rubber stamping of Congress and the Supreme Court. Story 19. Release the unredacted Epstein files now. Story 20. Open enrollment for government-sponsored health plans starts on November 1st. Since premiums must be set by that date, enrollment will likely continue through the first week of November. Story 21. I'm guessing October 16th. Cannot explain why. The outcome will be that the Democrats will mostly fold. Story 22. I feel this is going to take the cake. The federal government, as we know, it will not return as long as those Epstein files hang in the balance. Story 23. Unfortunately, as soon as those Democrats start running out of money, they will cave in another couple of weeks. Who cares about the people? Story 24. 2 to 3 months. The outcome will be, as always, they get richer and we get poorer. Story 25. Hopefully, as long as it takes to get the Affordable Care Act credits restored. I refuse to pay $1,000 a month for insurance. Story 26. I am afraid that the Republicans do not want to reopen the government. Story 27. The longest was 34 days during Trump's first term, from December 18th through January 19th. I have a sneaking suspicion this will be much longer. When the government officially reopens, jobs, unemployment, and consumer price index inflation data will be calculated and released. It will not be pretty. Take advantage of your 401k retirement accounts now, because they will take a huge hit when the federal government resumes operations. If you have not already, consider buying some precious metals. Story 28. Realistically, 3 to 6 weeks. However, with how dysfunctional our government has become, this could last more like 3 to 6 months. Story 29. It will last until it negatively affects one party's popularity. That will not occur until the effects harm some part of the economy. For example, air traffic controllers striking over unpaid wages or essential services failing to mail checks. Until then, it is a game of which side can blame the other more. Story 30. It will be over quickly. The Republicans will eliminate the filibuster and pass their budget. Story 31. Government shutdown? No. More like let's fire all federal employees with morals. The news said federal employees would not receive a paycheck, but Congress will continue to be paid. Hold their paychecks too, and you will see services resume as soon as possible without requiring additional overtime. Story 32. 2 to 6 months. The Republican Party is not interested in discussing anything, so it will just linger while that incompetent person totters around. Once he is gone, a few immature adults might start talking, but only after the country is in a great recession that dwarfs the previous Great Depression. Story 33. If Democrats have suddenly grown a spine, it will not end until the Republicans are willing to compromise. It is likely they will cave in within a few weeks. Story 34. At the rate things are going, the outcome will be an official dictatorship. Story 35. I don't know where we are in the timeline regarding the lack of an approved budget to meet bond payments. If that happens, a default by the United States would be catastrophic. The United States credit rating would take a hit, making borrowing more expensive for a long time, possibly permanently, and the United States dollar would lose significant value. I suspect wealthy donors who influence politicians will try to prevent that, but I have also read that weakening the United States dollar is part of Project 2025, so this could be part of a broader plan. Story 36. Over the past few weeks, there has been a credit downgrade, a weaker dollar, and failing services. Story 37. I really hope Senator Schumer will not cave. We are a federal employee family, but this is more important. Story 38. I think if it lasts long enough for the military to go 2 pay cycles without pay, it will cause chaos in the units. Story 39. Northern Ireland is watching the United States government shutdown. Amateurs. Story 40. This will last at least until the end of next week, but probably longer. Republicans control the White House and both chambers of Congress, and the conservative majority on the Supreme Court of the United States is partisan Republican. The Republican majority could have completely avoided this shutdown, but they wanted it to fire more federal public servants, to distract the public from the Epstein files and other nefarious matters such as the continued use of excessive force by U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents even against American citizens, to illegally deploy the National Guard from other states to cities with Democratic mayors and voters, to remove an increasingly incoherent and faltering Donald Trump from the public stage, and to continue to sow chaos across the country to intimidate the American people into submitting to their goal of fully implementing Project 2025. Story 41. Hard to say, but if history tells us anything, it probably will not last more than a few weeks. Pressure from voters and markets usually forces a deal eventually, even if it is just a temporary one. Story 42. The longest previous shutdown lasted 35 days. I would be surprised if this one lasts that long. The most likely outcome is that enough Democrats cross the floor to end it, probably within the next week or so, which would further strengthen the Republican Party's position and lead to much worse outcomes. Story 43. This is it. If the grand old party does not wake up, it will not reopen. The Democrats are done and it is way overdue. For your information, the votes are already there to call for a constitutional convention that will finalize the breakup of the United States of America. Story 44. I think until the 14th or 15th. When the House returns, the Democrats cave, say they tried, and pass a bill with even more pork that benefits Trump as punishment. Story 45. In a few weeks, the Epstein files will have disappeared from secure archives and been replaced with a crayon scrawl of a black man with the words, "Obama did it." Story 46. Until they come up with something to distract everyone from the list. Story 47. 2 to 3 more weeks and the Republicans will throw the Democrats a small bone to get them to sign it. Story 48. I think Trump is going to say fuck it and never concede, which would be a bad thing. Story 49. It will last almost 4 weeks, and 23 million Americans will pay much more than they used to for healthcare. Story 50. The problem with government shutdowns is that they do not shut down the parts that would make this country stand up and say, get your act together. Transportation Security Administration, Air Traffic Control, United States Postal Service, Social Security field offices. Those would cause an uproar. Instead, it is just painful for the behind-the-scenes employees and their families. It is unfair. Story 51. Trump and the grand old party want Congress and the government to shut down indefinitely so Trump can rule by royal decree. Project 2025. It's a shame supporters of Make America Great Again did not read it. It laid out exactly how Trump and his oligarchs were going to screw them over. Story 52. My biggest fear is that the Republicans planned this and they are going to use it as a pretext to take the nuclear option and eliminate the filibuster, and Project 2025 will escalate to extreme levels when they can pass whatever they want with a simple majority. Story 53. It is not long enough and contains massive pork barrel spending when it returns. Story 54. I guess it depends on how long it will take for the American people to find the courage to stand up to their fascist government. Story 55. The last government shutdown during the Trump administration lasted until airports began canceling flights en masse. It became a major moment once the skeleton crew of air traffic control staff could no longer cover operations without pay. That is my bet for when the shutdowns this time will end. I recall that at least one Republican-held state later passed a law or issued a declaration affecting its local airport to prevent that from happening again, but I cannot remember which state. Story 56. How long do you think the government shutdown in the United States will last? Less than a week. And what do you think the outcome will be? The Democrats will cave without getting anything. Story 57. 47 seems to be the number. The shutdown lasted 47 days because the 47th president reportedly has an IQ of 47. Story 58. The only correct answer is, who knows? These are not normal times. Story 59. Until Mike Johnson can blackmail a few Republicans into opposing the Epstein file release, they will not pass a funding bill. Story 60. Can someone explain how federal employees are being paid, or if they are not? For example, employees at the Department of Veterans Affairs, the United States Postal Service, the Transportation Security Administration, the United States Patent and Trademark Office, Passport Control at the Department of State, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and the National Park Service. Is there a contingency plan that allows these employees to come to work and be paid? Are these employees just doing their jobs hoping for back pay? Also, were the last two government shutdowns handled similarly with regard to these employees and their pay? Story 61. Shut it all down permanently, for all I care. Worthless government. Story 62. Some allege that Donald Trump does not want the Jeffrey Epstein files released. Democrats reportedly have the votes to force their release, but Johnson is refusing to swear in the new Democrat. Some accuse Trump of sexual abuse and say he wants to avoid accountability. They claim he may use immigration and customs enforcement to intimidate the American people, and that he is targeting undocumented immigrants as scapegoats. Some fear that in a few weeks new detention facilities or work camps could be created to detain or exploit them. Story 63. I wonder how many people realize this did not have to happen. This is the result of Donald Trump becoming president. He has caused our current economic catastrophe in little more than 8 months. What will the next 3 years bring? Story 64. It depends on how desperate a group of people who do not care about their constituents are to keep power. We could remain closed for another week or a month. The architects pushing this chaotic situation have clearly said they are willing to start a civil war to achieve their goals. For all we know, this could be the start of that. Or Republicans will yield. I fully expect Democrats to cave if the choice is civil war or opening the government. Story 65. Democrats will cave by the end of the week because of horrible posturing and layoffs. Trump will probably delay signing the continuing resolution by a day or two to make Schumer and Jeffries twist while more people are laid off. Story 66. This situation is a slippery slope. They will blame the Democrats for the holdup and use the left as a scapegoat, saying, they will not work with us. However, they demand the complete surrender of power. No more leftists. Story 67. If police officers and members of the armed forces are not paid, they will soon stop putting themselves on the line. Story 68. As always with this administration, what helps Russia the most? It might never open up again because if they do, they will seat that new congresswoman, and then Epstein becomes real. Story 69. 2 months. I think a lot of things are going to go wrong. People will be fired. How many? I do not know. I think this will be the stress test that sets up the United States for a recession. But those are just my musings. Story 70. Hopefully long enough to hurt the idiots who voted for Republicans. This is your reminder that these government shutdowns only happen under Congresses controlled by the grand old party. Their party is not one of governance and good faith compromise. It's one of extortion and lawless disregard for the safety of the country. Anyone telling you both sides are responsible for these shutdowns should be treated like someone who says both sides are responsible when a homeowner is violently robbed, because they would argue that if the homeowner had agreed to let the robber in and let them take what they wanted, no one would have been hurt. Story 71. I think it could easily exceed 30 days. The Republican Party is overly cocky and is overplaying its hand. Story 72. It will be over soon. The Democrats and Republicans will blame each other. Both sides will believe and repeat what they are told. News at 11. Story 73. I hope it lasts a long time. The more damage they do to the government, the less it will function afterward. Conservatives will take the blame for the subsequent government incompetence and ineffectiveness. Laughing out loud, they wanted to take poor people's medical care away. They are willing to destroy so much to get it. Let's see how much damage they are willing to do to spite poor people. Story 74. Until the Transportation Security Administration agents and air traffic controllers become sick of not being paid and quit, I am estimating 8 weeks. Story 75 weeks, perhaps a month. Poor and working class people who rely on the government will be worse off. It still will not change anything for the better once it is resolved. Story 76. Well, the representatives certainly will not make fools of themselves. Story 77. Hopefully soon. This is a dumbass move. Insurance rate hikes hit red states disproportionately. Let them happen in a way that allows Republicans to be squarely blamed. They will lose their message amid the blowback from a prolonged shutdown. Story 78. At least until October 15th, since that is the next time Congress is in session. Story 79. I am not sure, but you can bet on it on Polymarket if you want. Story 80. Based on previous shutdowns, I cannot imagine it lasting longer than 3 to 4 weeks once unpaid bills start piling up for service members. Usually that pressure is big enough to force some kind of resolution. With that deadline in mind, I can see Democrats digging their heels in and putting pressure on the administration to agree to a compromise. Eventually one will be reached. Both sides will cheer and act as if they won as usual. Story 81. It will last forever and conclude with the formal end of the constitutional order. I do not really think so, but imagine the odds I could get on that bet. Story 82. I was thinking 15 days or so. Democrats will capitulate on the health care subsidies because they are spineless. Story 83. Best case scenario. A return to a competent administration that has been absent for the last 6 months. Worst case scenario. In my humble opinion, the plan in play appears to be civil war. Story 84. They are probably using this time to finalize who is running in the midterms so that those not seeking re-election can be the ones to give in and allow the incumbents to campaign against the compromise. Story 85. When it starts affecting wealthy people, like last time when the air traffic controllers did not show up and they could not fly their private jets, it will be 4 weeks. Story 86. I have a bet with a buddy for ice cream that it will last 8 more days. Story 87. He will leave for an indefinite period. Continue ruling with executive orders. Story 88. I don't think we can rely on what happened in prior shutdowns to predict what will happen in this one, because the underlying circumstances have changed so much. The Republicans in Congress are in no position to negotiate because they no longer have any power. They have abdicated it. Why would one side negotiate when the other side cannot deliver on any promises they make? Only the president is in a position to negotiate at this point because he can simply scuttle anything the Republicans in Congress negotiate. There is furthermore no way to force the president to adhere to any deal negotiated in his name, even if he wanted to negotiate, which he does not. As Heinrich Himmler once said, "Who compels us to keep the promises we make?" President Trump has already frozen funding going to states that did not vote for him, and the Supreme Court of the United States, through the shadow docket, has already signed off on the president's power to impound funding that Congress has approved. We have not only tossed out the Constitution, we have effectively discarded the Magna Carta. The rules have been changed so completely that there is nothing for the Democrats to gain from any deal they could conceivably strike at this point. Senator Chuck Schumer also has no illusions about his future right now. As soon as any deal is struck, he is ruined, but he is not up for re-election until 2028. A lot of people are going to suffer, but there is no other way forward. Story 89. It will end with the Democrats folding lawn chairs, which is what they always do. They are milquetoasts, which is why we are in this situation. This could happen as early as this week. Story 90. However long it lasts, the outcome is always the same. Public trust in government erodes a little more. Story 91. It will probably take about 4 weeks. The outcome is that the goals of Project 2025 will be accelerated further, so that even if the Democratic Party manages to swing the populace in the midterms, it will not matter because the damage will be largely irreversible. Story 92. I would hope it takes as long as necessary for Republicans to do the right thing and protect our health care. Story 93. Well, the government has shut down. We might as well create a new one to take its place. One that works the way we want right away without all the voting we used to do. Republican Party, probably. Story 94. Republicans have no intention of doing anything different. The beatings will continue. Morale improvement be damned. Story 95. The goal of the shutdown is to cut the federal government. This is Russell Vaught's job now. He will get rid of almost every agency. Once that is done, the Senate will change the filibuster rules and approve the new budget. Story 96. They leave before Thanksgiving because the United States Congress goes on a long recess. God forbid they work during that time. Story 97. I do not think Republicans in Congress ever intend to come back. The federal government will continue to be shut down as the executive orders the military to take over hostile cities in states that did not vote for him. The Supreme Court lets it happen because they are bought and paid for, while Congress is de facto dissolved until the next elections. Story 98. Within 35 days, possibly longer, Trump will cave on the Affordable Care Act subsidies. Story 99. At this point, who cares? America is a lost cause. Story 100. About a month during which they dismantle things they do not like. Story 101. The same angst over the economic side of the coronavirus disease 2019 shutdown is applied to this. There is pressure to keep things going. That said, I think the longest shutdown belongs to T. I checked Wikipedia, which reports 35 days as the longest, so there is that. Story 102. I doubt it will last as long as the previous shutdown under President Trump. Maybe 2 to 3 weeks. I worked as a paid intern at a National Historic Site in 2017, and while everyone else received back pay, I did not. I got to give the representative who visited us a piece of my mind when the government reopened. Story 103. It depends on whether the president actually acts on his declaration of civil war against anyone who is not a Make America Great Again supporter. I will let you know on Friday. Story 104. Same as always. It will last until the jaundiced jackass backs down. Story 105. If allowed to continue, Make America Great Again, Trump and Miller will completely dismantle America. The only hope is that the courts slow-walk Trump until the midterm elections and that Congress takes its oath of office seriously and impeaches Trump and most of his cabinet. Story 106. This cannot last long. The large ratified bill covered costs for fiscal year 2025. I believe they will not be paid during this period. Story 107. Similar to the last shutdown of a little over a month, cracks are already appearing as our local food shelf asks for donations to help those laid off by the weakened and strained economy. I am not sure which side will fold first, but I know that if the shutdown lasts more than a month, one of the two sides will collapse under pressure. By then, funding will run out for the special supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children, for food banks, and for other assistance programs. It will be ugly. Story 108. We have all seen this play out before. DACO. We may not have gotten any concessions from the Republicans. We showed them that Democrats mean business and are not afraid to play hardball. Story 109. I do not know how long it will last, but I am terrified that my medication will be outlawed for no reason other than hate. Story 110. My husband lost his job in April directly because of tariffs. The company was doing well until the tariffs began, and then layoffs followed. Story 111. Part of me hopes the shutdown lasts longer so fewer laws can be passed. Another part of me wants it to end quickly so innocent people like my friend's sister, who I believe worked in public affairs, can get a paycheck. Story 112. If I were a betting man, I would say upwards of 2 to 3 months. This is nothing like Trump's previous shutdown. Trump is out for blood. The gloves are off, and all laws are pointless to him because they are not enforced. He does not want to compromise or govern, which is what it will take to move forward. Unless the Democrats cave, which is entirely possible because Senator Schumer and Representative Jeffries are feckless, I do not see any common ground being found. I could see some Republicans facing enough pressure to join with Democrats to continue healthcare tax cuts so people's premiums do not skyrocket, but only if this lasts 6 or more weeks. It will be whoever can win the media game. Trump usually wins that because the mainstream media eats him up and amplifies his lies and rhetoric. Story 113. The single longest shutdown in recent history occurred during Donald Trump's last term. It lasted 31 days. I suspect it will not be that long this time because public opinion already indicates that many people blame the Republican Party. I expect Donald Trump will cave, then pretend he did not, and the Republican Party will claim they meant this all along or something similar. Story 114. I guess we are going to break another record. If anything, record-breaking is a trend with this administrator. Story 115. As long as it takes for them to misdirect the vote to release the Epstein files. Story 116. As of October 5, 2025, the United States government shutdown has entered its 6th day with no resolution. It is unclear how long it will last as negotiations continue between the President and Congress. Story 117. I think it will continue through November. The problem is that Republicans want the shutdown, and Democrats think it makes Republicans look bad, so neither side has a reason to budge. Story 118. In a couple of weeks, the outcome will be Trump blaming Biden. Yawn. Story 119. Probably a little less than a month. Just enough time for Democrats to fumble the messaging and look like fools. Story 120. It will probably continue until the Democrats fold, because Republicans are not willing to negotiate. Those who say 3 to 4 weeks may be right, as it will definitely become serious once essential workers stop working and participate in boycotts. Story 121. I hope for the abolition of the established two-party system and meaningful government reform. Just kidding. It will likely stay the same or get worse. Story 122. I think this will be a uniquely harmful and long-lasting shutdown. Trump has absolute control of the Republican Party and no personal investment in the consequences of the shutdown and no sympathy for those impacted. His only real pressure is to deliver the tax cuts for those who want them before the end of the year. The Democrats, meanwhile, are most likely to cave because only a few moderates breaking ranks can end the shutdown. However, there is no political will among the Democratic base to accept that outcome, so finding enough members willing to risk losing their seats may be more difficult than it seems. As a result, this shutdown could easily last several months, unlike anything we have seen before. Story 123. It will last until Trump gets most of what he wants done permanently. Then the stalemate will break with no points scored by the Democrats. Story 124. It will likely end before the election. Republicans may try to present it as a major last-minute victory. Story 125. I think the longest was 35 days. Enough Democrats will cave and it will be over. Story 126. It will last until Wall Street begins to decline. It may last 2 to 4 months. Story 127. It will end in Trump's favor. The biggest mistake most people make about him is underestimating him. He is far smarter than most realize. Story 128. Let's review the facts. Democrats voted against the continuing resolution. If the government remains shut down, Democrats lose because most federal workers are Democrats. If Democrats vote for the continuing resolution, they lose because undocumented immigrants will not receive free health care. Democrats are running out of voters, so they will keep the government shut down as long as possible. Story 129. I would not be surprised if it is after Thanksgiving. They will work 5 more weeks, then recess for their normal 2-week Thanksgiving break. After that, there are only a few weeks until the Christmas and New Year holiday break. Story 130. It should last until we have a government that recognizes the law. So what? 3 years and 4 months? Story 131. I think 37 days is a new record, and the Republicans will essentially opt out of it and lie to constituents, saying they won, even though the Democrats will have won technically and in proportional representation. I am a lifelong Republican. They have been doing this for decades. This is how Make America Great Again has taken over, because they believe their own leaders rather than think for themselves. Story 132. Probably a few weeks. I hope the outcome is that the general public has a better grasp of what a so-called government shutdown actually is. Story 133. Who has the "I did that" stickers featuring Trump? Story 134. The Speaker of the House keeps canceling votes to extend it. This is a hostage crisis and part of a long-range plan to make everyone feel vulnerable and suffer. Naranja Nero wants people to beg him to solve their problems and, like Rorschach, he will say no. Story 135. The longest shutdown was during Trump's first term. I suspect this one will last longer because he has more loyalty within the Republican Party than he did 8 years ago. The longer it goes on, the more damage he can inflict. Not that Congress is actually doing its job. They are violating their oath as much as Trump has, nearly daily. Story 136. I suspect 3 to 6 months, mainly because this is a very new situation for the United States. It is in the interest of supporters of Make America Great Again to keep it shut down, and it prevents them from having to release the files. Story 137. If the government shuts down, can we all stop paying income taxes? Story 138. I am at a point where I do not even care that it is shut down. Maybe I should care, but I do not. Story 139. They should follow the Northern Ireland model and have shutdowns for 2 to 3 years. However, unlike Northern Ireland, they should learn from that experience, recognize how harmful they are to everyone, and never do it again. I know it is a pipe dream to expect politicians to learn from their mistakes or to ensure something positive comes of it, but realistically a shutdown of this length would cause so much suffering that it would finally hit home. No gain without pain. Story 140. Honestly, fuck the federal government. With the lunatic in charge and the bootlicking portable document format grand old party, it is better off remaining shut down indefinitely, and taxes should stay with the states. Story 141. Is there anyone here who lost their job and voted for Donald Trump? Are you still voting for him, and do you believe this is not his fault? I am just curious, as a non-American. Story 142. 60 to 90 days this time. As long as the immigration and customs enforcement agents receive their payment, everything is okay. Story 143. Trump absolutely does not care about anyone but himself. This might last until he leaves this earth, which hopefully will be very soon. McDonald's, work your magic. Story 144. Some parts of the government will never recover from this. Story 145. You think it's coming back? Huh? Maybe. Have you ever been this unsure before? Story 146. Politically, whoever holds firm may gain leverage going into budget negotiations, but it is risky because public opinion tends to sour on shutdowns over time. Story 147. Likely 2 to 3 weeks. Pressure will build from unpaid workers and service delays, forcing a temporary deal, but core issues will not be fully resolved. Story 148. To be honest, I hate to say this, but I think you will have 10 Democrats cave in and vote for a clean bill. Story 149. The air traffic controller strike is what ended the last Trump government shutdown. This time, I do not think he will be able to fix it and will be stuck with striking workers. He will try to break it but will fail, end up with a huge mess, and then back down claiming victory. That seems to be his modus operandi. Story 150. It will not stop until after October 18th and will end because Democrats will cave as usual. Story 151. The government is not shut down. Go build a fully automatic Armalite rifle Model 15 and stop paying taxes, and see just how shut down they are. The things that should be shut down forever never will. When will people realize we do not need masters to rule us at gunpoint? Never, because government is a tool of violence that people who pretend to be civilized use to control others, ban freedoms, and seize property without consent. Tyranny by mob rule is still tyranny and is turning out to be one of the worst forms. Neighbor turns against neighbor, commanding militarized police and armed governments to enslave, imprison, or execute each other with their ballots, all while smiling proudly and justifying atrocities against human liberty in the name of democracy and majority rule. So much for the idea that violence has no place in politics. Politics is, by definition, violence. You cannot control or take from someone who does not consent and who is willing and able to defend themselves without violence. You cannot stop people from withdrawing consent and opting out of your schemes without violence. Without violence, there are no politics or governments. By voting to ban something for someone else, you are complicit in police dragging people from their beds with machine guns in their faces. Shut it all down forever. If you want to control me and take my things, come do it yourself instead of hiding behind governments and police. You will not. You cannot. That is why you cling to governments, worship parties and rulers, and will not let go. It has nothing to do with wanting police and firefighters to protect you or with schools and roads. It is about being able to control others against their will by force in numbers at police gunpoint while pretending to be innocent and harmless with your ballots. That ballot you wield is more dangerous than any gun to anyone who does not share your values. I hope, if nothing else, that open-source autonomous swarm weapons can one day neutralize any advantage in numbers currently enjoyed by governments and police and render them inert and useless. I would rather risk total human extinction than concede to a violent species so intent on asserting dominance over one another. Story 152. If it means they have to vote on the Epstein files, then maybe never. Story 153. 1. Forever. 2. Absolute dictatorship. 3. War, more brutal deportations, killings and imprisonment of people who dare to speak up or who are not normal, hunger, pain, economic destruction, civil war, falling behind, China taking the lead. You think it will not be you. I quote the Nazi Hermann Göring, "Wir Judist, bestimme ich, I decide who is Jewish." You also have an uncle in power who likes to decide who the enemy is. You have read this many times, my American friends. Choose between risking something now or finding out what 1943 felt like. It is the same choice Europe faces regarding Ukraine. Gear up now and have some minor conflicts with Russia, or let them grow until they stand in our countries. They have clearly stated their goals. It sucks. But as Gandalf says when Frodo does not want to go through Moria, written by an author who had to live through World War II. Story 154. On November 17th, I think we will come out of it with some bullish but odd cryptocurrency and banking rules. Possibly central bank digital currencies. Story 155. Every time the Republicans shut down the government, they successfully get their base to blame the Democrats and increase their power. There is no reason to believe this will be any different. Story 156. Members of the military, air traffic controllers, and Department of Defense employees are not getting paid. Air traffic controllers are also severely understaffed. We are going to see these personnel stop performing their duties. Story 157. I really hope Democrats don't back down. Let the Trump administration dig its own grave. They are only asking for continuation of the Affordable Care Act and a tax credit. Story 158. Probably a couple of weeks, enough time for politicians to grandstand and then agree to the same deal they could have made on day one. Story 159. If I were to guess based on past experience, I would say a few weeks to a month, but I am not sure this time. The president has given clear signs that he favors the shutdown because it makes it easier to eliminate programs and employees he does not want, even temporarily. Could the shutdown become the new normal and last 3 years until the next presidential election? What would an election look like with the government in shutdown mode? Surely that would not lead to more fraud and corruption, would it? Story 160. Outcome. They will have enjoyed their end-of-summer vacation and will be paid retroactively in full when they return. A nice gig for sure. Story 161. I am not sure how long it will last. It will probably break records. I do know it will not end until the Democrats capitulate. The Republicans do not care. They are enjoying it. Story 162. 3 to 4 weeks. Any longer and we burn things. It gets wild quickly. Story 163. It will last until just before the November elections. Then they will come up with something else to distract from the Epstein files. Story 164. Long enough to inconvenience ordinary people, but not long enough to force any member of Congress to miss a paycheck or face real consequences. Story 165. It will last a month, give or take, and the Republicans will cave but with a public relations twist to save face. However, those whose insurance coverage is preserved by the Democrats will thank the Republicans who had wanted it stripped. Story 166. Who cares? It only affects leeches and will last as long as any previous one. You are all children and have only experienced 2 election cycles. Story 167. I have hoped for months. Let us go for a new high score. Story 168. I feel terrible for my stepmother. Before the pandemic, she used to drive 12 hours a day to different nursing homes to provide occupational therapy. During the last couple of years, she has been able to work from home doing telehealth and has helped more people than when she drove to locations. She also types nonstop when she finishes her visits. She is getting older, and because of the shutdown, she now has to drive to all the locations again because telehealth is caught in the middle of all this. I can tell she does not want to do that anymore, and it is physically hard on her. I really hope they figure something out soon so she can return to working from home. Story 169. I honestly think it will never happen. That was the whole point of Trump's presidency starting in 2016. Bottoming this out completely. It is a tactic used in business to remove unnecessary people and processes, as well as those who do not want to be there. It is why several of his businesses went bankrupt. Story 170. As soon as it becomes clear in the media which side is to blame for keeping it shut down, there will be pressure to end it. Right now, it is not clear, so there is no real incentive to end it when a party still has a chance to win. Story 171. Probably by the end of this week. Enough moderate Democrats have shown some cracks, and it only takes 5 more to pass the continuing resolution. My guess: Shaheen from New Hampshire, Warnock from Georgia, Peters or Slotkin from Michigan, possibly Warner from Virginia, and one of the 2 Arizona senators. This will be done by Friday. Story 172. More time and money are being wasted by a government that is supposed to represent us. Could be weeks before it is reopened. It is political grandstanding that we pay for. Story 173. In 3 to 4 weeks, the air traffic controllers will run out of money and start calling in sick so they can work second jobs to earn a living. The Republican Party will have no choice but to give in and put the health insurance provisions back into the spending package. This is essentially the same thing that happened during his first administration. Air traffic controllers are essential. Once they stop showing up, the whole country grinds to a halt. Story 174. It will last until 2 days after the major commercial airline accident. Story 175. I have a friend in New York City who works for the government. We have not kept in touch, so I do not know their exact job. They had just returned from a week-long conference in Las Vegas when the government shutdown started. They must cover the full cost of travel and meals until the shutdown ends, which is a lot of money they do not have. Their mother, who lives in another state, is selling belongings to help cover their expenses. This is a terrible situation. Story 176. I think last time it was about a month, and it was the Federal Aviation Administration's air traffic controllers who were going to strike and essentially shut down all air travel, which forced a vote to reopen the government. I suspect something similar and hopefully sooner. Story 177. It will last a few weeks and will accomplish almost nothing, just like every other shutdown that has ever happened. Both sides will claim to have gotten their way, and people will re-elect almost all of them. Story 178. From the inside, it will probably be 2 to 3 more weeks. The optics of having no government during Thanksgiving and especially at the end of the year around Christmas will be more embarrassing than squelching their egos. Story 179. It will be the same as last time, about a month. Once essential workers start running out of money and calling in sick, they will be forced to take action and reach a mutual compromise. Story 180. You sound like a very unhappy crowd. When you vote, remember who hurt you and who did not come to your rescue. Story 181. Finirà, come sempre, con noi che paghiamo e loro che si congratulano a vicenda. Story 182. Not sure if this means anything right now, but there are already reports of air traffic controllers calling out sick. If this continues and worsens, and even the billionaires and their Gulfstream jets are grounded, the situation will be resolved quickly. Story 183. This will continue until air traffic controllers begin calling in sick because of high stress and lack of pay, and until Americans call their senators about flight delays and cancellations. Story 184. Do you agree with removing all undocumented immigrants who crossed our borders during the Biden administration? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.